Hello and welcome to another video. I'm thankful you're here. Today is one of those videos where I go overboard and make a ton of cards, more than I can count, but I got really excited about one of the particular techniques and how it creates many cards at once. So today I'm focusing on frame dies. Dies that cut thin frames are very popular right now. And I'm going to show you 3 different techniques for using frame dies so you can get the most from them. The first of the 3 techniques is the one I focus on and I make a lot of cards with. However, at the end, I will have 2 other techniques to share with you, just 1 card each for those. Okay, let's look at some frame dies. For this video, I decided to use the new Honey Bee thin frame dies. There are many options available. These are 3. So on the left, you have the squares. In the center, you have circle. And on the right, you have the A2 thin frames. If you like to make A7 or bigger cards, there is an A7 thin frame die also, but I didn't use it today. In today's video, I will also be using a Polygon thin frame die. So you'll see options for all 4 of those. I like that these particular dies are large. For example, the circle is 5.5 inches across, and that circle die cuts 21 thin frames. Now with these thin frame dies, you can use an individual frame. Say you want to create the walls of a shaker card or just a frame on your card. But today I'm showing how you can use the thin frame dies together, all on one card. I find these dies very handy and can be used in many ways. However, if you do not have thin frame dies like these, you could instead use stacking dies. So say you have a circle stacking die set that has lots of circles from small to large. You can tape them together to create thin frames. And I will link to a video showing that if you want to check it out. But for today's video, I'm focusing on these dies because they really are a nice time saver. Okay, let's look at our first technique, and this is the one that I made a bunch of examples for. It's a great way to mass produce colorful cards. Now, I did a bunch of rainbow cards and some others, so what I decided to do was start by picking out my cardstocks. Now, people ask all the time what cardstocks I use. There are several different lines, and I use a little bit from each, but I like heavyweight, so usually around 100 pounds. I will put a list below to the different colors I used today. It's a nice middle-of-the-road rainbow, not too light, not too dark. So if you want to see those specifics, I will have that in my YouTube description below and on my blog. I'm hoping that by showing you these particular colors, you might be able to find something that suits a need that you have. In addition to the rainbow cards I also did some with blues and greens using scraps. So keep in mind, this technique is great for using up those leftover cardstocks. All right, let's start die cutting. This process does include a lot of die cutting because I die cut each shape from each color of cardstock. But then I ended up with so many frames that I could make lots of cards. So I ran that through my die cut machine, and I just wanted to show you what you end up with. See all these frames, these concentric frames that you can put back together in any color order you want. These are really handy, but as you see, they come apart when you die cut them. So here's a trick to keeping them all organized. I just left the rings in the die, and now I'm taking a piece of tape, that any kind of temporary tape would work, go right across the back and press it down, and then peel them all out together. Now I'm going to keep all of those rings together on the tape. Then I can go grab whichever one I want for a particular card. But that way they don't get tangled up or get messed up, and I can easily see which one I want to grab next. That is a huge time saver when using these frame dies. So during a Zoom call with friends, I die cut the square, circle, A2 frames, and Polygon from lots of different colors of cardstock, and I have them taped together in a stack ready to go. Now let me show you how I reassemble all the frames together to create something colorful. I like to use any kind of copy paper, printer paper, or typing paper. Recycled is even better. I cut mine to 6 by 6, and I'm drawing from just little pencil guidelines connecting one corner to the other. That way I know where the center of the paper is. Next, you need to apply adhesive. Now, I would recommend using glue stick for this. However, I ran out of glue stick. Glue stick is inexpensive and a great way to cover a large area like this, but tape runner works great. You could use double-sided tape if you want, but you can see I'm trying to put as much down as possible so every ring or every square or whatever will glue down to the paper. You don't have to draw the line for the center, but I find it's helpful so I don't run out of room on the edge. So I'm going to use the squares as an example. I started with a little square in the middle, and now I'm just going to work my way out, reaching for a different color each time. Off screen, I have my taped together square die cuts in all the different colors, and I just go from one to another and add it onto this background. There's something very therapeutic about this. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together, which you've heard me say in many videos. And Lila joined me on this. It was fun to see the different color combinations we could do. If you're one of those who's doing a lot of Zoom calls with family and friends far away, this is something great to do during that. Once I'm happy with the size square that I want, you can make it smaller, bigger, whatever you want, I can just go ahead and trim the excess off. Now I have this one piece that I can glue to a card or cut up into smaller pieces to create a new pattern. One of the things I like to do is cut it directly down the center and then cut it directly down the center again. And now instead of squares, we have these triangles that we can arrange in different ways. I could keep cutting these into smaller triangles and create even more patterns. Now keep in mind, I still have lots of leftover frames in these colors that I can assemble to make more large squares. That's what I did here, and this time I'm cutting it a bit differently for a different type of look. You'll see me wave to the people on my Zoom call here. Just a little proof that I am doing this while chatting with friends. So look at all the fun ways you could arrange these pieces also. So let me show you how I like to go about arranging pieces on my cards. This is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding white note card. And I found the center point there. When you're arranging these pieces, I think it's really helpful to make sure you get everything centered, because if it's off center, sometimes it stands out big time when you have these bold pieces like this. So I decided to take these corners of this square and just have them kind of meet up there to that dot that I have in the center of my card. I use a strong liquid adhesive for this. This is Gina K Connect. You could definitely use other adhesive, but I find that it's super fast to use. You don't need much. It dries quickly, and that bottle lasts me a lot longer than like a tape runner would. Okay, so now I have these 4 corners glued together, creating that fun pattern in the center of my card. Once I'm done, I just flip it over and cut off the excess, but I keep those excess little triangles that we cut off because I can use those on another card also. That's what's fun about this technique, is you can just keep going and make as many cards as possible. Here I'm just playing with some of the other pieces, showing you some of the other design options you can do. You can keep cards simple by using smaller pieces. The sky is the limit. Now, I was mass producing these cards for various reasons. I've been sending out ear savers, which you hook to your mask so that your ears don't get hurt, don't hurt from the elastic. And I've been sending those out to nurses and essential workers and different people. And every time I send some, I try to include a handmade card. So I needed to make as many cards as possible, and I thought these would be great because I can change up the occasion on them. I can be bold and cheerful with them. So it's a fun technique if you want to make a lot of happy cards at once. Here's another one that I ended up playing with. I didn't finish it because I lost that last square to finish this pattern, but I ended up finding it later and did create that card off screen. So you can see how you can overlap these and do lots of fun things. Before we get started with the cards, let me show you all the circle pieces that I created. I even had more circles left over, but I ran out of energy and time, so I just will show you the ones I have. You can see how they're all a little bit different and different sizes. Remember, for these, I did the circle frame die from each of the 21 colors of cardstock. Then I created all of these and many more. Each one will be a little bit different, like this one has the light pink at the center. The next one has the light pink on the outside and has the dark pink at the center. So it's slightly different, but that way I can use up every ring that I create for each color. You'll see how they start to assemble very quickly, And before you know it, you'll have all of these pieces to make loads of cards. I think the circle's probably my favorite because there are so many different ways that you can add them onto a card, which I'll show you. And by the way, if you like the look of this type of card, I will link below to Laura Basson. She's a good friend of mine, and she does a lot of rainbow geometric kind of cards, and you might like what she has to offer too. Okay, so check out all of these circles that we have. I even have some smaller ones. And now it's time to make some cards with all of these pieces after I trim the excess off from around the edge. Again, I found this circle was really fun to play with. It's very easy to cut this right down the center. I just like to use my Fiskars trimmer here, and I can see where the center is and just cut right along it. Then there are many ways you can use those half circles on your card. In fact, you could use this as a rainbow if you wanted to. So this was a really easy way to make a very colorful rainbow. Another thing you can do is go ahead and cut them again in half. Then you have these little pie pieces that you can assemble on the card in different ways, which is what I found to be my favorite thing to do, is put these 4 little pie pieces in the corner of the card. So I made several examples with that. And then last but not least, we have the Polygon thin frame die. This creates a smaller piece, but you can easily cut them up and to arrange them in different patterns on your cards. So here you can see I have 2 rainbow ones that are the same, and then I just cut them in half, and then I can arrange those pieces to create a new look. So all of these examples for this first technique show putting the different color frames back together in a concentric form. However, you could use individual frame dies on a card to frame an element if you wanted to, and I'll save that for a future video. Now let's go through all of the cards that I made using the pieces I just created. Before I show you those, I do want to show you the different stamp sets that I used on my cards, so you know what I'm referring to as I show you each example. This is the Honeybee with Sympathy stamp set, which is an older one, but I reach for it often because of the encouragement sentiments. There's hang in there, thinking of you, sending my love, it's going to be okay, holding you in my heart, praying for you, and so on. So I thought these would look nice in the center of some of our bold patterns. Next, we have the Honeybee Baby stamp set. Now, none of these are baby cards, but I encourage you to look at some of your specific theme stamp sets. Sometimes there's a sentiment in there that would work for many things. And this hello in this set was the perfect size for many of my cards. Another older set that you can tell I've used a lot is the Honeybee Rainbow Wishes stamp set. There are lots of encouraging sentiments in here that would work great for my rainbow cards, but I decided just to use that thinking of you there on the bottom. Another stamp set that I've used a lot for my encouragement cards that I've been mass producing lately is the Honeybee Everything Wonderful stamp set. This is a large stamp set, and these greetings are fantastic. I've used praying for you, thinking of you, may your day be filled with joy, you're the best, blessed to know you with sympathy and love. And today I'll be using the thinking of you on several cards. And then next is my favorite stamp set of 2020 so far. I am so crazy about the set. It's the Honeybee Paper Hug stamp set and the coordinating dies. This stamp set was created to help with relief efforts during this virus, and the cards are perfect for sending during this time when many people are feeling isolated. So another great thing about it is half of the proceeds of this go to relief efforts. And I think that's wonderful. And these sentiments can be used for a long time in the future too. That consider this a paper hug is wonderful. I'll be using the stamp set and coordinating die set in a future video also. All right, let's go through all of the cards that I made with these thin frames. Remember, I still have lots of frames left over, lots of pieces that I can use for future cards. My first example is a pretty simple one, but has bold color. I used the circle right at the center of an A2 card, and then I added a hello die cut in the center. This is the Memory Box Jotted Hello die, which has been discontinued, but there are many on the market that have a similar look. Next up, I have these 2 Thinking of You cards from that Honeybee Rainbow Wishes stamp set. These I just cut the circles in half so that I could put a sentiment right in the middle. On one I did it in the center, on one I did it towards the bottom corner at an angle. This next pair of cards also has the circles that were cut in half so they look like fun rainbows. The card on the left, I use the Birch Press Hello Sugar Script die, which I use a lot in this video, and I use in a lot of my videos. I like it because it's bold, there's the white shadow, and then the black die cut on top. This one is the Honeybee Hello die set. It actually has a third layer you can cut if you wanted to. For this one, I also just cut a circle in half and glued them in the corners and trimmed off the excess. By the way, if you wanted to make these look more like a rainbow, you could leave some of the center circles out. Now here I had some circles of different sizes that I thought would be fun to kind of scatter on my card. It was a great way to use up some of my leftover circles and create a different design. One of my favorite cards from this bunch is this 5.5 by 5.5 inch square card. I used that Honeybee Paper Hugs stamp set for the sentiment in the middle. For these cards, I just took one circle, cut it in half, and then cut it in half again, and glued the 4 pieces into the corners of my cards. Here you can see what it looks like on an A2 card, so this is 4.25 by 5.5, with a simple sentiment in the center. You can see I made several with this design because I really liked it. And in each one, I used something different in the center. This is a great way to go through and use up any of your sentiments or sentiment dies that you've been wanting to use for some time now. For this particular one, I used the Honeybee Hugs die set. And for the word hugs, I used holographic cardstock from Erin Lee Creative, which really makes it stand out even more against that bold background. And by the way, I know I'm going through these quickly, but I do have photos of the cards on my blog, which I'll link to below, and all the products are linked below. I'm also putting the product name on the top in hopes that it helps you find anything if you're looking for it. I also thought it'd be fun to die cut some hearts from some of our circles. I used the Memory Box Double Stitch Happy Heart die set and die cut a large heart. I really like the look of that circle right in the center. I added a simple thinking of you sentiment on a stamped piece of white cardstock scrap. I really liked the look of the heart, but keep in mind you could die cut a square from the circle pattern, you could do a star, any kind of dies that you may have that are large, you can cut from these pieces that you've created for a different look. Okay, now let's look at the cards that I created using the square thin frame die. Here's the one you saw me assemble earlier. I just added a simple die cut to the center. Again, I always reach for those dies that offer the shadow, which I cut from white, and then the word die itself, which I cut from black. Here's another one where I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I cut that square into 4ths and glued it on the center of my card in a different sort of pattern. You can get really creative with this. Here I used that same heart die that I used for the circle cards, but with the squares. You can see how that holographic cardstock really catches the light nicely. I changed it up with one, I put it off to the side, and one I kept it right in the center. This is a great way to experiment with different design ideas so you can see what you think of them and remember that for future card making. With this one, I just added a simple sentiment right across the center. This card design is another one where you could leave the sentiment off, and then when you have a particular occasion you need a card for, you can add that sentiment onto it. This would work for many different occasions. Now remember, when I cut this large heart out of the center of our square, I have a lot left over on the outside edge. So here's an example where I use those extra pieces. From that extra outside area, I use smaller heart dies from Hero Arts, and I just die cut a bunch of hearts from those leftover pieces and assembled those on a card. This shows you just another way that this technique really stretches and you just can keep making as many cards as you want. Okay, let's look at the cards that I created with the Polygon thin frame die. Here I just cut some of the polygons in half and then arranged them to circle around the sentiment that I wanted to keep as the focal point. That's from the Everything Wonderful Honeybee stamp set that I like so much. For this one, I cut my polygons in 4ths, and then I arranged them to create a border along my card. By the way, I know using rainbow colors is very popular in card making right now. Some people like it, some people don't. I like rainbow cards because I think they're very hopeful feeling and very cheerful, but you could definitely do these in any color scheme that you prefer. Now for these cards, I just used some of my frames to create different looks, and I glued them right in the center of an A2 card, and then added a sentiment in the center of the polygon. These were very quick and easy, as a Polygon thin frame die is smaller than the circle, square, and rectangles. And here I took 2 polygons and I glued them onto the card and added my hugs sentiment. I think I'm going to go back and add a 3rd polygon towards that bottom right there. I just felt like it needs that. And then my favorite of the Polygon designs is this one that's just bold and fun. I just randomly assembled some of the polygons and then glued them onto my card with a little white space between each to create a fun pattern. And last but not least are the cards that I created using the Thin Frames rectangle die. These are all pretty basic. I just added them to the center of cards, sometimes using more frames, sometimes using less frames. I could have been creative by cutting them or putting them at an angle, but I was just looking for some basic colorful card designs. For these particular cards, I ended up leaving a lot of the smaller frames out of the center and instead putting white cardstock there with my stamp sentiment. This gives a very smooth look that doesn't add bulk when you send it through the mail. But for some of the other cards, I did use those frames all the way to the center, and I really like that continuous look. And then I just added a stacked die cut sentiment to the center instead. Some of the cards I left a white trim on the outside edge. Some I took the color all the way out to the edge. I like that you can change things up and get whatever look you like best. Here's one where I did all greens and blues on the left. Those rectangles were made from some scraps that I had. I didn't follow a pattern, I just glued them down randomly, and I really think it gives a fun look. As does this one. Again, I just did random colors, leftover pieces, great way to use up scraps to create a bold design. I think this one was my favorite of the rectangle cards. Now keep in mind that you can do this for the background of a card. You could add a little critter to the center. You could just do all one color and glue all the frames together to create an interesting background. I hope that by showing you all of these examples, you can see the many ways you can create these concentric, fun, bold backgrounds. Okay, now let's move on to our other 2 techniques for using these thin frame dies. This one is to do foiling using the die itself. Now for this, you need a foiling machine. There are a few on the market. The one that I reach for the most is the Spellbinder's Glimmer machine. Depending on what die cut machine you have, you'll need to get the foiling machine that goes along with it. This goes with the Spellbinder Platinum. Now all you have to do is turn it on and let it get hot. That gray surface will be warm to the touch, so you got to be careful, but you can lay your die onto it. There are special hot foil plates you can use, or you can use your dies and get more uses from them, as I'm doing here. Okay, so now you need to take the special foil that's meant for this hot foil machine. I like this particular gold one because it's kind of got a holographic look to it that is just really eye-catching, and it foils very well. You lay that pretty side down onto your die. Then you put your cardstock on top of that. I'm using a colored cardstock. You could use any color you want, white, black, whatever. This just happened to be the scrap that was sitting right there. Then you put the 2 shims on top. That's what the instruction manual says. And you push this button here on the bottom left. It'll flash while it warms up. When the light gets solid, as you see here, you take the plates out of this, all of those plates, by the handle, and you feed it through your Platinum 6 die cut machine. Again, depending on what machine you have, you'll want to see the method for doing it. This is definitely a very easy process. And I will link to a video all about this Glimmer machine here if you haven't seen it before, or if you want to learn more. Now I'm just slowly putting pressure onto that plate by going back and forth a couple times. Then I put the platform back into my Glimmer machine so I can go and do more. Then remove the foil off my cardstock and check it out. The heat and pressure pressed the foil in that circle pattern onto my cardstock. Now for this card, I wanted to use the Simon Says Stamp Beautiful Butterfly stamp set. It's been sitting on my desk and I really, really like the look of it. I white heat embossed one of those butterflies onto vellum and then I cut it out. I thought that would be a nice simple focal point on my card. Be sure to check out the sentiments on this one. They're beautiful and are great for stamping in the center of a circle or focal point on your card. I trimmed my foiled background down and now I'm gluing it onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding white note card. I wanted it to look like I matted this with dark cardstock, but I didn't want to waste a big piece of dark cardstock. So instead, I ran my liquid adhesive right along the edge of my foiled piece and then added a thin cardstock strip to both sides. So now it looks like it's matted, but I didn't waste a lot of cardstock. I just used some scraps. Now I can trim the excess off, and I have my white heat embossed vellum butterfly over there. I also have a white heat embossed sentiment, and then I cut little strips to be the same size as the sentiment. Instead of using foam tape, I like to use pieces of cardstock to build up dimension. So I glued one extra strip behind the main sentiment, and now I'm gluing that right onto my vellum butterfly. Then I'll glue a couple additional little cardstock strips behind that. So what this does is it holds my butterfly onto the card, and it's going to give dimension above and behind the butterfly. You could use craft foam here, but I'm trying to use more of my cardstock scraps instead. I find it gives stronger, more sturdy dimension and is less wasteful. Okay, so now that I have all of those little pieces built up, I can put glue on the back and add it right to the center of our card. A very simple card design and one that I plan to do more mass producing of. Now, if you do not have a foil machine, but you want a similar design for your background, one thing that you can do is take your thin frame die and lightly rub Versamark ink over the top cutting edge of it, just lightly. Then press it onto your cardstock, remove it, add gold embossing powder, and heat set it, and you'll get a very similar look. The foil does shine more than embossing powder, but it's a great option if you do not have a foil machine. Okay, my third technique for using those thin frame dies creatively is to make an impression. This is a great way to add texture to your background and is really great for a focal point. I decided to use my Spellbinders tool again because I have it out. You can do this with any of your die cut machines. You just want to follow the instructions for the machine. I have this embossing mat, which allows me to make an impression with the die instead of cutting it. I put that down, then my cardstock, and I'm going to give a quick mist of water to my cardstock and then wipe the excess away. This just helps the paper from kind of tearing or buckling as you do the impression. You can skip this if you wanted to. Now I've put the square thin frame die on top, cutting edge down, and then my embossing plate on top of that because that's the instructions for this particular machine. Now as I run this through, it makes an impression of that die instead of cutting, and look at that beautiful texture. It's great for a focal point behind our butterfly. Now since I had my machine set up, I thought I'd also make an impression for the background too. So I'm using these new Honeybee Flower Petals and Flower Center cover dies. I have a video coming soon with many ideas for using these two. I really like the style. Now I'm using the one on the right to make an impression on our background. I have a top folding note card here. This is Hero Art's Arctic cardstock, and I am just taping that cover plate onto the front panel of our note card. Just a little temporary tape to hold it in place. I then have my embossing mat still there. I'll lay my note card with the die, with the note card open on top, then the embossing plate on top of that. I'll run this through, and again, this will make an impression with the die instead of cutting. So now I have that fun floral pattern as a subtle impression on the background. Now I trimmed down my square impressed piece and then matted it on a darker cardstock, and I'm gluing that towards the top center of my card. I have another white heat embossed vellum butterfly that I created. I'm adding a Praying for You sentiment strip right on top of that. And then on the back, I'm gluing 2 or 3 more of white cardstock scraps. Again, just building up the dimension and using up some of those little pieces that we have. So this shows you that you can use those frame dies to create textured backgrounds. If you have stacking dies and want to create a similar look, I'll link to a video here that shows how to do that. These are just a little bit quicker because the die is already set up for you. And with the stacking dies, you have to tape them together first, but I'll link to that if you want to check it out. So there you have it. Lots of card examples showing different ways to use thin frame dies. I will be using these products again in a future video, so stay tuned for that. If you wanted to check out any of the videos or products that I talked about, they are linked in my YouTube description below. And I have photos of all of these cards over on my blog in case you want to check those out. In the middle are a couple other videos that I've referred to that I hope will be helpful. I pray that you are all staying happy and healthy during this difficult time. I'll be back with a new video soon, and take care.